I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Wilmington City Council. I'd like to welcome all those who are with us this evening and those who are watching us at home. Thank you for taking an interest in your government. At this time, I'd like to introduce Sergeant Ronald Evans of the Wilmington Police Department for their invocation. If everyone will stand and remain standing afterwards for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sergeant, welcome.
Let us pray. Most gracious Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your continued mercy and your grace that you bestow upon us day in and day out. We thank you for covering us with your blood and giving us your protection. We ask that you continue to guide the minds and the heart of this council as they prepare to make decisions that will be beneficial to the citizens of this city. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have one presentation this evening, and that presentation is to recognize Penelope Spicer Sidbury, who is our city clerk, who is the recipient of the North Carolina Association of Municipal Clerks 2024 Municipal Clerk of the Year Award. This time I'd like to ask the entire City Council if they'll meet me up front. Madam Clerk, if you'll meet us up front so we can bestow upon this great award. On August the 24th, Wilmington's own Penelope Spicer Sidbury was honored by the North Carolina Association of Municipal Clerks as the 2025 Clerk of the Year. This is an annual award presented to an outstanding clerk or deputy clerk as the association's Summer Academy. Among the selection criteria for this award are being active in local, state, and national associations, demonstrating commitment to professional development, active involvement in the community, and distinction in the field. Penny exemplifies all of these, and we congratulate her on this honor and achievement. She has been active in state leadership for the North Carolina Association of Municipal Clerks and the North Carolina League of Municipalities. She also has some notable firsts. She was the first African American to serve as festival president of the North Carolina Azalea Festival, and the first African American to serve as the city clerk for the great city of Wilmington, North Carolina. She's held that role since 1993. If you're counting, that's over 3 decades. Our city manager, Tony Caudle, made the trip to Charlotte to represent the city of Wilmington in bestowing this honor on Penny. And tonight, we, as the city council, want to echo those congratulations as they say, thank you for a job well done. You are a tremendous public servant. You have served this community not only as the clerk, but in so many different roles, Penny. And I just want to say on behalf of the City Council, thank you for your public service to this great community over many, many years. And a lot of people don't realize sometimes what a clerk does, but all of the records, all of the votes, all of the contracts, all of the paperwork that is attached with anything that the City Council does, she is this custodian of, and she does a phenomenal job in doing that. So we want to say again, congratulations and thank you. And I don't know if you want to say a few words, but you should.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, my city council. I appreciate this honor. I am so touched. I have in the audience the president of our association, who's a good friend of mine. She is the clerk of Leland. Sabrina Reinhardt is with me. I am so thankful. But this job is a wonderful job, and I cannot do it alone. So Parker is my deputy city clerk. She is phenomenal. I stole her from Leland. And the new person we have on our docket is Kristen, and Kristen's up front. She's a new assistant, has not been on the payroll very long. But I want to say thank you to Mr. Cottle, my city manager, and he came up and surprised me because I was a little nervous. I knew I had been nominated, but I had no idea that I was going to have this honor. My husband and my girls and my family, I want to thank them because they was here. But I just want to say my work is not done yet. I have a few more things I need to get done. That mega vault that we have down at 929, it's a clerk's dream. But I love serving my community. Wilmington is home. I am totally appreciative. I love my church family. I love the community. And I still volunteer in the schools, although my children are out of school. Anything I can do, please let me know. My team and I, we're on it. We do the best that we can. But it's an honor to serve this great city.
Thank you so very much. Congratulations. Brings us to our next item of business, which is our consent agenda. Items 1 through 5. Are there any items that any council member would like to hear separately? If not, what are the wishes of this council? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Andrews. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. And so that brings us to our next item of business, which is our public information. In public information, we have 4 speakers that have signed up to speak with us this evening. Each speaker will be allotted 5 minutes. The city clerk will mark your time, and when you hear that beep, you know your time is up. First speaker is Ms. Kathleen Shower, who will be speaking to us about vaping regulations enforcement.
I'm assuming I'm coming here, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
you.
Hi, I appreciate the opportunity to address the council. I am speaking here on the topic of vaping regulations and enforcement within the city and the county. I will just do a brief overall for those who may not know. In November of 2020, New Hanover County Board of Commissioners voted to implement an ordinance mirroring a Health and Human Services Board rule prohibiting the use of combustible tobacco and e-cigarettes in New Hanover County. That would be effective February 1st, 2021. I am going to skim over the dangers of smoking that we all know. Tobacco use, I don't think anyone is unaware that it has been considered a health concern, but it seems that there is less awareness that vaping and e-cigarettes, and if you say e-cigarettes, it's a cigarette, it's vaping, seems to not be as taken very seriously, but although there are still a lot of research being done, the research that's already been done has been pretty substantial and pretty efficacious that it is harmful. There are just the secondhand smoke risks, not even the direct risks. Vape aerosols pose an especially high risk to developing and compromised respiratory systems. This means infants, children, pregnant women, those with lung conditions are especially vulnerable. For someone who already has a lung condition, exposure to secondhand vape aerosol can trigger symptoms and asthma attacks and worsen the condition. Of course, this would translate to anyone with cancer. And I want to really emphasize that people who are prone to this, you may see a child or an infant and say, okay, they're vulnerable, but you may not know someone's pregnant, you may not know someone suffers from respiratory illness, so it's not a visible disability. If we can term it a disability, and in some cases, certainly you can. The American Lung Association has coined the term popcorn lung for people who vape because of the aerosols, fine particles, and heavy metals that reach deep into the lungs and do damage. And they say that if somebody else is vaping in the same area, you're breathing it. Those particles are entering your lungs where they can do damage. The chemicals include lead, formaldehyde, toluene, and the chemicals to add flavor to the vape have been implicated as possible causes of serious and permanent lung damage in people who vape. And vaping also creates third-hand smoke, which is when it goes on to surfaces. If you touch it, then it's on your hands, you touch your face, and it goes to your skin, which is your largest organ, and is absorbed. So again, this may sound a little bit basic, but I really want to emphasize that this is not, not a small matter. My experience, I moved here a year and a half ago to Wilmington. I love it. I live near downtown. I go out a lot. I go to restaurants. I go to bars. I go to music all the time. I go to a lot of things. I cannot express to you how many places I've had to leave because of vaping for my own personal health concerns. I didn't even know it was illegal. And when I finally got so frustrated that I looked it up, I was surprised to find out that it is illegal. And I have since then become a little bit more empowered to go up to someone and say, excuse me, do you mind not vaping inside? And I will say that 75% of the time, the answer is, like, continue to vape. This is including people who vape that are employees of the place, bartenders, and it's very hard to ask a patron to stop vaping when the bartender is vaping, or the person. So this has happened in restaurants. I've been to trivia nights where the trivia person is vaping. I've been to, and I just put down a few examples because when I submitted, it said, how does this impact business? Just last week, I went for a friend's birthday to lunch down, I don't want to name particular businesses in any of this, but in the Cargo District, and it's a restaurant/bar, and when I went in to set up the table for my friend's birthday, and there were a number of us going, I got there early, there was someone vaping at the bar, and okay, at noon, and there was a bartender talking to the bartender, and I said, excuse me, I said, we're actually gonna have people here. And I said, would you mind going outside to vape? And she said, no, that's not gonna happen. And the bartender's right there, so clearly the establishment is not enforcing this. I was in the line, I'm very used to having it happen at bars and restaurants, and it's not even as if you can move somewhere else. People are doing it everywhere. It's not exclusive to like, oh, that's one person. I mean, if you move over there, someone else is doing it, but vaping really fills up an area and it doesn't dissipate very quickly. I was in the line at Food Lion recently. This was a new one for me, checking out food, and the woman right next to me started vaping in my face, and I will admit for the first time, is that 5 minutes?
It's 5 minutes, but go ahead.
Oh, is that 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, and I will say that someone recently, wow, that went fast. My friend's daughter posted on Facebook that her daughter was, her 15-year-old daughter was taking a automobile training driving class, and the instructor in the car with her vaped. The girl was very uncomfortable, but she didn't feel comfortable saying something. She told her mother later. The mother then went to the school and said, this instructor was vaping with my daughter in the car. So that's a person who his child was comfortable enough to say to her, and the mother who activated. So I'm sure that this is widespread, but I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was going fast. I think that the word I want to use is really entitled. There really seems to be an entitlement for people to vape. It is, when I've said to people in bars that, they're like, I said at one bar, again, I finally started saying it's illegal, it's against the law, and she laughed at me, the bartender. She's like, go anywhere downtown. Like, we are not exclusive. So I am just curious as to what the enforcement policy is, and I will add that when I lived in Boston in the 1990s, and I smoked cigarettes back then, I don't anymore, they made smoking illegal, and the Irish bars laughed, and they said, well, we are just going to pay the fines, and until there was really enforcement from the city, it didn't happen. So I will stop because I have no more time, but thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Our next speaker is Ms. Diana Hill, who will be speaking to us about development. Ms. Hill?
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and staff. My name is Diana Hill. I live at 2210 Klein Road in Wilmington. I've been in Wilmington for 31 years. I come to you tonight regarding an issue that actually is your responsibility. I was appalled that on August 6th, the council spent 3 hours and 25 minutes negotiating unnecessary rezoning at Independence and Oleander. Finally, the council devised the rezoning from the requested O&I to MD17, totally ignoring the neighborhood homeowners' request for status quo R15. At the end of the meeting, the council asked the applicant's approval. Is the applicant willing to take the suggestion to MD17? The residents' request to have time to digest this turn of events was ignored. The motion was made and seconded by the two Wilmington realtors on the city council, and although one other councilman was concerned that many developments like this one are not consistent with the neighborhoods, he voted in favor. A vote was taken with no second reading. There were so many misleading facts in the presentation that my 5 minutes will not be enough. I guess the bottom line is that the property was purchased at R15 zoning prices, with evidently every expectation by the developer that rezoning in this long-standing residential neighborhood would be granted, and it was. What does it tell us that some residents felt that they needed to privately purchase a piece of this property to keep it from being developed? Are people in Wilmington so suspicious that our officials just can't say no to developers, that they feel they have to protect themselves? The applicant attorney argued that the long-standing Midtown neighborhood is consistent with the Hanover and Independence shopping centers. That is ludicrous. He based this on the premise that at some time there will be some multifamily units built over at the mall, a half-mile away. The fact that there are single-family settled neighborhood units 20 feet away evidently was lost on him. Another selling point was that there are grocery stores within a walkable quarter mile. That distance may be true. I challenge anyone to walk to Harris Teeter across Independence, or to cross Independence and then Oleander to get to Lidl or Whole Foods. The alley for access to the development will be widened from 6 feet to 18 feet. This will cause several trees to be destroyed. Even insignificant trees suck up 400 gallons of water. And the addition of 12 feet of impervious surface with the widening of the alley, and you're going to have some flooding. One councilman did cite this as an improvement to the alley for the community, as if this would be a good shortcut to Oleander. To add insult to injury, it sounded like after the alley is widened for the benefit of the development, the city would then be responsible for maintenance. There were several not-so-subtle threats of what R15 could bring if the zoning wasn't approved. We were shown pictures of unattractive houses, threatened with the possibility of accessory buildings allowed in residential zoning, clear cutting of trees if trees allowed if R15 is kept, no setback requirements. Those hints of dire options were supposed to scare us into compliance to abandon single-family housing, and I guess it did. Only 2 council folks voted against it. If the city continues to build higher and denser in the chase for affordable housing, what will the future demographics of Wilmington be? Only seniors and singles? Will families with children move to Pender and Brunswick for their American dream? Encroaching on settled neighborhoods will only make people hesitant to buy when they no longer can count on location, location, location. When will we realize that we are no more able to build affordable housing than New York City, San Francisco, LA, or Atlanta were? Can we stop destroying our city before it's too late? It's time to stop rubber stamping more density, at least until we catch up with what already has been approved. It's one thing to allow building with current zoning. It's another to rezone our stable neighborhoods for more density. This not only impacts the quality of life in those areas, but impacts the value of the investment of those homeowners. What we need is a timeout from rezoning requests for more density. What we don't need is a city council aiding and abetting and actually composing the rezoning for this onslaught to our city. We need a city council that protects us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ms. Nikki Mintz, who'll be speaking to us about housing. Is Ms. Mintz here? Okay. Last speaker this evening is Ms. Krista Johnson, who'll be speaking to us about ceasefire resolution.
Good evening, members of the Wilmington City Council. My name is Krista Johnson, and I first came and spoke out in March about passing a ceasefire resolution, and I, along with others, have been coming to every meeting for months urging action from you all on this issue. We appreciate the time that some of you have taken in meeting with us, but I want to speak to the entire council tonight because it seems that so far our reasons haven't been compelling enough to act. I wanted to lay out 5 additional reasons for this body to support and pass a ceasefire resolution. Number 1, the call for peace and support of the Palestinian people. This is the reason most of the people in our coalition are involved. We have seen, heard, and read about the collective punishment of the State of Israel has carried out over the past year in response to the events of October 7th. Most of us had anticipated that the State of Israel would use their response to displace ordinary Palestinians, seize more land, and carry out a genocide. And now, with more than 40,000 confirmed people killed in Gaza, and the actual death toll is certainly much higher, mass starvation, the return of polio, and the deliberate destruction of hospitals and schools, and now extremist settlers armed and supported by the Israeli army illegally seizing land and home in the West Banks, our fears have been confirmed. Faced with these facts, we have chosen to seek support for a ceasefire, or an immediate and permanent ceasefire. Another reason, number 2, is combating anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. There can be no doubt that the ongoing conflict has fueled prejudice and discrimination against both the Jewish and Muslim communities. Promoting a ceasefire not only fosters a climate of peace abroad, but also helps diminish the hatred and division that can take root in our own community. At a time when hateful rhetoric is at an all-time high, with even a presidential candidate using the word Palestinian as a slur, we must stand firm against all forms of hate and work towards an environment where all individuals, regardless of their background, are respected and valued. Given the history of Wilmington, it is imperative that we make it absolutely clear that racial hatred will not be tolerated here, and this is an opportunity to do that. Number 3 is respect for our laws. If the preceding reasons are not moving enough or are not personally important to you, another reason to support a ceasefire resolution is to adhere to our own laws. The Leahy Law mandates that the United States must withhold military assistance from foreign security forces if there is credible evidence that these forces have committed gross human rights violations. This law reflects our nation's stated commitment to ensuring that the U.S. support does not contribute or perpetuate abuses against civilians. It is a fundamental aspect of our legal and ethical framework for international engagement. In essence, endorsing this resolution is not a matter of just moral responsibility, it's a legal obligation. It demonstrates our city's dedication to upholding the values of justice and human rights. Number 4, the right to dissent. Most Americans view the right to dissent as a healthy expression of democracy and freedom and think that the First Amendment is something worth protecting. We know that the social gains from the civil rights movement were hard-won through protest, boycotts, sit-ins, and more. The language of the oppressed is dissent, and when our government is out of step with the people, that expression is all that we have left. With older laws on the books, such as the anti-boycott, divest, and sanction law that Governor Cooper signed in 2017, to the newer laws just enacted making it a crime to wear a mask while protesting, this freedom of dissent is under threat. Today, it is being used to silence opposition to this war, but what tomorrow holds, we cannot know. I hope that the Wilmington City Council recognizes that we have assembled here peacefully since January. We have followed all of the rules of speaking in the public comment portion of your meetings and have assembled supporters outside and inside the hall, and we are only asking you to amplify our voices. Change doesn't come from the top. It's something that is built from below, and if that is something that you also believe, we would encourage you to support our resolution. And finally, number 5, this is an easy resolution to support. Our coalition took a lot of care to craft language for a resolution that all Wilmingtonians could support. You've heard some slanderous allegations at this podium about what is written in our draft, but I would like to state for the record a few things that have been wrongly portrayed about our group and our draft. First, we acknowledge that all human life is precious, and we acknowledge the suffering of the Israeli losses on October 7th and the hostages taken that day. We call for the release of all of the remaining hostages, and we also call for the release of all the innocent Palestinians being held in administrative detention and jailed without charges. We have even met with members of the North Carolina Democratic Jewish Caucus, whose members have spoken out against us here, but they found very little to quibble about in the language of our resolution. The purpose and goal of this resolution was to stop the killing now and save Palestinian and Israeli lives. When we wrote this draft, we fully intended it to be just that, a draft. And we have always welcomed input from council members and the city manager. Truthfully, it doesn't go as far as I would like it to personally, but I, along with my coalition members, recognize that the business done in City Hall is a compromise, and we wrote it in that spirit. I've emailed you all a copy of the draft, and I would love to hear your honest feedback about it. We really want to get something done here. Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to the next item of business, which is our public hearings. I've been asked on the PH1 that this is the applicant is asking for a continuance, Mr. Manager, according to this document here. Ordinance amending the official zoning maps of the city to rezone property containing 0.57 of an acre of land located at 508, 510, 512, and 516 McCray Street from CB Community Business District to R3 CD Medium High Density Mixed Residential District, Conditional District for 2 triplex units. This was continued from our August the 6th, 2024 meeting.
Bear with me for just a moment, Mr. Mayor. Just been informed that the date requested is uncertain, so you will need to specify a date to which to continue the public hearing. I would suggest that you probably would want to hear from the applicant.
Ms. Wolf, could you please come forward, please?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Cindy Wolf. I'm here on behalf of the owner and applicant of the site. It was some unforeseen testing that is becoming more timely than we expected. We understand that we need a date certain, and we believe that the November meeting, which would be the first Tuesday in November, should meet our requirements for getting everything done that needs to be done.
You sure you want to go to the second meeting if you have testing that you're doing on the site?
That gives us 60 days from today.
You're fine with that?
Yes, sir.
Madam Clerk, what is that date?
The first meeting is November the 5th, and the second one is November 19th.
Okay, so November the 5th is the date that you're asking for?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Wolf, okay. So, okay, may I ask council if I could have a motion to continue this item to November 5th, 2024? We have a motion made by Council Member Andrews, second by Council Member Waddell. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye and hitting the aye button.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item has been continued to November 5th, 2024. Next item of business is item PH2, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Wilmington to rezone property containing 0.134 of an acre located at 418 and 420 McCray Street from CB Community Business and R5 Medium Density Mixed Residential District to R3 Medium High Density Mixed Residential District. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Zach Smith, our assistant planner, will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. This is public hearing number 2, general rezoning of 418 and 420 McCray Street. The site is located at the intersection of McCray Street and Rankin Street. The site is 0.134 of an acre and is currently vacant. This map shows the general vicinity surrounding the request, as well as photos of the subject site. These are photos of the existing conditions surrounding the subject property. These are photos of the adjacent properties and land uses. Residential land uses are located to the north, south, east, and west of the site. The sites are currently zoned CB, Community Business District, and R5, Medium Density Mixed Residential District. The sites are bordered by CB and R3 to the north, R5 to the east and south, and HDR and R3 to the west. The subject property is located within a neighborhood-scale infill development area of opportunity on the Comprehensive Plan's Growth Strategies map. Neighborhood-scale infill development principles place particular emphasis on surrounding neighborhood fabric and focuses on small lot infill development, especially single-family residential. Both lots are approximately 2,920 square feet in size, which is less than the 5,000 square foot requirement for R5 zoning. The lots do not meet the lot width requirements for R5 or CB zoning districts. The proposed R3 zoning would allow the existing lots to become conforming. Staff believes the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with the recommendations of the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan and that the request is reasonable in the public's interest. Staff recommends approval. In addition to staff's recommendation, this request was unanimously approved at the August Planning Commission meeting. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is here as well.
Are there any questions from council? Okay. Thank you, sir. At this time, I'd like to recognize the applicant.
Thank you. Again, for the record, my name's Cindy Wolf, and I'm here on behalf of the owner. This is a straight rezoning, so there's not a lot to say about it. We appreciate the staff and the Planning Commission's recommendations of approval. As he pointed out, we've got an unusual situation where we do have some community business on this corner, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But I wanted to just point out that the reason we're asking for the R3 is not only to make those lots conforming, but to make them consistent. If it was R5, then the setbacks would cause the building envelopes to be 16 feet and 19 feet. It just makes a lot of sense for two similar-sized footprints with different architecture to be placed on the R3 lots, which would allow a building envelope of 23 feet on each one. So beyond that, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Are there any questions of Ms. Wolf?
Thank you very much.
Right, sir. Ms. Wolf, before you leave, Mr. Spears has a question. Councilmember Spears?
Sorry.
No illustrations for us? Just because it's a straight, because you're going R3? Like, could we
On a
not?
straight zoning,
Yeah.
there's nothing that would show the specific houses or what they would look like, but this illustration shows what the building footprint, the envelopes would be. So down in the lower right-hand corner, those two 33-foot wide lots would then be able to have up to 23-foot wide homes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Okay. This time, I'm going to open up the public hearing and ask if anybody in the public wishes to speak on item PH2. They'll come forward and state their name and where they live for the record. Madam Clerk, yes, sir, go ahead. Okay. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional comment?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. Are there any more questions from council in respect to item PH2? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for the wishes of council, and I will also note that whoever makes the motion must read a consistency statement for the record. We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Spears, second by Councilmember Waddell. Mr. Spears, could you please read the consistency statement for the record, sir?
Sure. I move to approve the proposed amendment to rezone property located at 418 and 420 McCray Street from CB Community Business to R5, Medium Density Mixed Residential District, and find it to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and to find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would allow for compatible infill development.
Okay. All ready to vote? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Joyner, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item, which is item PH3, which is an ordinance amending the official zoning maps of the city to rezone property containing 6.56 acres of land located at 507, 509, 515, 519, 525, and 529 South Kerr Avenue from R10 Medium Density Single Dwelling District to MD 17 CD High Density Multi-Dwelling Residential District, Conditional District for 184-unit multi-dwelling development. This time I'd like to recognize the City Manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Senior Planner Patrick O'Mahaney will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. As mentioned, this site is located on the east side of South Kerr Avenue, just north of Kimberly Way. It's approximately 6.56 acres in size, and it's currently occupied by single-dwelling residential structures. Here's a map showing the general vicinity surrounding the request, along with some existing site conditions. These are photos of some existing conditions looking along Kimberly Way and South Kerr Avenue. And here are photos of adjacent land uses, which include a mix of single-dwelling, multi-dwelling, office, and retail. The site's located in an area that's currently zoned R10 residential. This portion of South Kerr Avenue contains both R10 zoning and MD17 zoning located to the west and south. The applicant's proposing to rezone the site from the existing R10 district to an MD17 CD, which is a high-density multi-dwelling residential conditional district for the aforementioned 184-unit residential development. Here's the proposed site plan, which consists of 3 multi-dwelling buildings containing a total of 184 units, which is approximately 28 dwelling units per acre. There are 56 one-bedroom units proposed, 80 two-bedroom units, and 48 three-bedroom units. The MD17 district allows for 17 units per acre, however, with a workforce housing component consisting of at least 10% of the total units at 80% of the area median income, the density may be increased to 36 units per acre, which is done in this case. The applicant is proposing all of the units in the proposed development to be considered workforce housing units. These are to be for households with incomes between 30% to 80% of the area median income, the AMI, and these income limits will apply for a minimum of 30 years. There is proposed driveway access for this site along South Kerr Avenue, as well as Kimberly Way to the south. The subject property is adjacent to a live-work innovation zone on the Comprehensive Plan's Growth Strategies map. Areas well suited for infill development should be redeveloped in a way that maintain or enhance the desired character, increase housing options, and improves the overall quality of life in the vicinity. New development and density increases are encouraged for sites within close proximity to commercial services, employment centers, and transit routes. The proposal before you today places workforce housing near major services, institutions, and transit options while preserving existing specimen trees located on site. Staff believes this request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and that it's reasonable in the public interest and recommends conditional approval. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval at their August meeting as well. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and the applicant is here as well.
Any questions for our staff? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This time I'd recognize the applicant.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. My name is Amy Schaefer. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Blue Ridge Atlantic. I have with me Mr. Sam Weldon with Blue Ridge Atlantic, as well as our engineers, our civil engineer, our traffic engineer, and our land planner. I do want to thank staff, both planning staff, engineering staff, and the housing staff. They've been extremely helpful during this whole project, and as we go through, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Again, planning went over the area just to orient you. Again, this is near Sam's Club, across the street from Trask Coliseum and UNCW. There's a bus stop right on the site, so it is a great location for interconnectivity, multimodal transport, and even pedestrian connections. Again, we are asking for MD17. It is surrounded by MD-17. There are some single-family houses still in the area, but it is an area ripe for transition. Again, planning staff went over the comprehensive plan and how we comply with all of these areas and how this project is a good fit for this space. I wanted to show you some sections of the current site. Just to let you know, a TIA was not required for this project, but the applicant did one anyway, and no off-site improvements were required as part of that TIA. Kimberly dead ends into what is already zoned in MD-17. I don't know if there's any potential future development for that site proposed, and the roadway network in there is not public to my knowledge right now, but there would be the possibility for interconnectivity potentially in the future. At our neighborhood meeting, some of the residents were concerned about this corner of Carr and Kimberly. As you can see, there's a lot of overgrowth. We explained to them that as part of the development, we would have to clean up the site triangle and take care of that, which would be an improvement for them as well. The picture at the bottom shows Carr into Kimberly, so you can see that there's a center turn lane already into the site and also bike lanes. Just some more pictures of the overgrowth in the current state of Kimberly and Carr, which will all, of course, be cleaned up as part of any redevelopment of the site. Part of the redevelopment of the site is a multi-use path, and again, we'd like to thank the engineering department for help with that. We were able to work with them to get the city's plans and be able to incorporate that. The building sites have taken quite a few different turns. We were able to save all 5 significant specimen trees on site, and that took some maneuvering of the buildings, so we thank staff for that help as well. The neighborhood will have amenities for playground, clubhouse, picnic shelter. Again, we really truly anticipate this hopefully being a family. There's a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units on the site. We don't really have a lot of elevations for what we hope this project to look for. We're not there. The picture on the front of my slide was that. But just to show you some of the other projects that Blue Ridge Atlantic has done in the area. This is Canopy Point. It was annexed into the city of Wilmington a while ago. This project is up and running, just to show you some of the architectural styles and amenities that this kind of project can provide. And again, just some other projects that they have around. This one is in Raleigh. And again, another in Atlanta. So for the conditional zoning requirements, the city of Wilmington does have an extreme need for housing, and especially workforce and affordable housing. This project, as stated, is between 30 and 80% AMI. So it is affordable housing. It's the lower end of the affordable housing spectrum. The current R10 zoning was established prior to the surrounding developments, the expansion of UNCW, and a lot of the other multifamily projects in the area. While this property is not directly in those innovative areas, the live-work opportunity, it is directly adjacent to, and the comprehensive plan isn't meant to be site-specific. Again, the MD-17 allows for up to 36 units per acre with just 10% workforce housing. We are only asking for about 28 units per acre with 100% affordable housing for an additional 15 years, so a total of 30 years. And again, we believe that this project supports the city's mixed-use places of redevelopment, allowing us to increase the building height a little bit to 4 stories, which is allowed in MD-17, also allowed us to save some of those trees. And again, just the significant need for housing in the city of Wilmington. I'm here, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have specific about the project. And again, we do have our experts, our civil engineers, traffic engineers, and then of course the applicant developer.
Okay, we have Councilmember Spears.
Good evening, Amy.
Good evening.
So, you know, the specifications of this project is, you know, I like it.
Thank you.
But I am concerned about, and this is a good slide to be on, the primary entry to this development being right there on Kerr. Certain times of the day, that intersection is nuts. There's no other way for me to describe it.
Sure.
So I understand that a traffic impact analysis wasn't needed. It was done. I'm hoping it's not too late to use some innovation as a different way to get into this development. Because, like I said, 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's going to be gridlock right there.
Yes, sir, and I can have our engineers come up and talk about the improvements that are proposed for Carr Avenue. But we do also, as you can see, there is a secondary entrance on Kimberly Way, and that will bring you out to that stop sign that I showed you, where we will, of course, have to do some improvements. The property, unfortunately, there just aren't any other roadway connections. If I can show you. So as you can see, as we discussed, Kimberly Way dead ends. Capri Drive does not come all the way through. One of the residents at the neighborhood meeting actually asked us about that, because if you can see, there's a parcel that kind of looks like it might be a continuation of right-of-way, but we don't have any knowledge of if there are any plans for extending Capri Drive. So right now, Carr Avenue and Kimberly are our only options for access.
Right, but you'll make improvements if you were to make improvements on Kimberly Way, and I'm not a engineer by any aspects of the imagination, but if you could come in off of Kimberly Way and whatever improvements you make there to make the improvements on the property, because, I mean, Kimberly Way is a dead end, and it's very small too, but again, the traffic from Randall at certain times of the day, it goes that far back.
Yes, sir. As you know, my office is right over there, so I am familiar as well.
And so once you add 180, how many units?
184. Yes,
Right.
sir.
And in this, you know, the 30 to 80% AMI, you're going to get pretty much full capacity right there. And so you're definitely going to add to traffic right there. And it's, I mean, you heard Diana Hill, she just trashed this earlier.
I do. I hear Caroline Cheeves, our traffic engineer, coming up behind me, so I'll let her speak to that. Real quickly, I do want to say, we really do hope that the walkability, the wave transit stop, which is an active stop, and the multimodal path will also help with that. But let Caroline, the expert, weigh in for you.
Come on, Caroline.
Hello, thank you. My name is Caroline Cheeves. I'm a professional engineer in the state of North Carolina. I work for DRMP, and I performed the TIA for the development. So I think Amy did an excellent job explaining to you our access constraints out here. And this image also depicts what we are seeing with the current conditions, where there is a left turn lane down the center of the site. And one of the things about unsignalized intersections along busy streets is that occasionally you have to wait a while. But the good news is that there are traffic signals and the traffic does clear. In our TIA, we found that the purpose of a TIA is to see the delta, the change of what it looks like in the future without this development and what it looks like in the future with this development. And then we compare those two to see what that change is. And the reason why we have these thresholds for if a TIA is required or not required is because we see at those thresholds, that's when you start to tip over to, we see impacts at intersections at those points. A TIA was not required, and what we found was that, you know, based on the WMPO guidelines on traffic impact analysis, we weren't increasing the delay at any intersections by a significant amount. So that delta we were seeing was very small. And, You will have to wait a little while, as most residents do along Kerr Avenue, as they're driving. However, what we were seeing was that it was still operating within the DOT acceptable levels of service. And that's, yeah.
Right, well, that's good. You're focusing on the future. I'm kind of focusing on what it looks like right now without even having this project there. And like I said, at certain times of the day, it's bad. So there's no way that you can tell me by adding 180 plus units that it won't be impacted dramatically, because I know that it will. And it already, like I said, go out there tomorrow at between 4 and 5:30 and tell me what you see. I'm certain you'll be like, oh, Councilman Spears had it right. Yeah, so I mean, outside of that, I'm pretty much on board, but I just think there's some sort of innovation that I would love to see that would get me all the way to being super supportive of this project.
Yes, sir, and we will still have to go through full TRC, and while the WMPO and DOT have already looked at this through the CIA, any kind of driveway permits that would be required will have to be reviewed by all the appropriate agencies. So, you know, the design could change as that happens, but right now, we've already been working with engineering with the multimodal path as well. That kind of hinders what kind of turn lanes you can have and those kinds of things. So I don't want to get out of my lane and start talking about those expert things, but we will consider and continue to review that as we go through the evaluation process if we get approved tonight.
I just don't want us to come back next year and talk about putting a roundabout on Kerr Avenue.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mr. Waddell?
I'm in favor of this project. I don't think we've seen something with this large of a range of AMI and 100% workforce, I don't think, since I've been here. So it's nice to see, but this is probably for more my edification more than anything, considering the proximity to UNCW. I'm just wondering, with that 30 to 80% AMI, I know it's not a student rental product, but are students considered in that AMI? Can they be considered, and how's that translate? I haven't really seen one that's this close, but considering the real deficit of housing at UNCW, I would assume that you probably are planning for this. Just want to hear a little bit about it.
And this is Sam. I heard him come up behind me. I will let him answer that. If you can just introduce yourself as well.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. Yeah, there we go. That's a little better. To answer your question, Councilmember Waddell, that has been discussed. That would be for a property management decision. You know, the AMI levels are in that realm. This is a family project, so there are certain requirements that these folks do have to meet to qualify to live there. That's certainly an option. Yeah.
I guess so. I mean, if a young student was applying, they're probably applying with their parent as a co applicant, but maybe a graduate student.
But yes, very much so. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, just a follow-up on that. So, bottom line, are we building dorms?
We are not building dorms. This is a family project, affordable housing project. We're not building dorms.
So families will have a great shot at being one of those.
This will be a family project. Yeah, they absolutely would be for this development. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Joyner?
Well, you mentioned they'll have to meet the requirements. Remind me or enlighten me as to what the requirements are.
I'm not really following your question. The requirements to become a tenant there?
So in response to Councilman Waddell's question, you said there were certain requirements they would have to.
Yeah, we have certain threshold requirements for, the property management has to go through their due diligence on future families as well. We're not the property manager, but yeah, absolutely, that is the case.
Was your question answered?
Yeah, my question was with regards to the area median income, how would that be considered with students versus your general family that was, I mean, basically, if an applicant has their area median income between that 30 and 80%, that's the criteria as I understood it. Mine was just really more for my edification of how
Yeah.
students were considered in that. And I think you answered it, but you're welcome to elaborate.
Chris Eisenzimmer, also in Blue Ridge Atlantic Development. So when Sam mentions this is a family project, no, a full-time student with not, employed as an undergraduate student cannot live in this apartment complex. A graduate student with 2 children that is working, that passes to Sam's point about requirements, AMI requirements, background checks, et cetera, so on and so forth, that you would have to go through any apartment complex to live in, to screen, good paying, law-abiding citizen tenants out is that process that, you would go through if you were going to rent an apartment at an apartment complex. But to sort of put minds at ease there, it's not a dorm. Student that's, whose parents are putting them through school cannot live here. NCHFA, with their tax credit regulations, has specific guidance and land use restriction covenants that will survive for 30 years on this project that dictate and guide all of these. So it is not just up to us to say that. There is a recorded document that runs with the land, with the real estate, that cannot change. We cannot change that.
And so Councilman Waddell, you reminded me this might be one of the first affordable housing projects that you all have. So there might be some threshold questions about, what does AMI mean? What is 30% AMI? What is 80% AMI? And you have an expert on staff who I know has some slides ready in her presentation. But just so that you're aware, the way that works is one person, so Councilman Barnett, a student, they would have a particular AMI that they would have to reach. But if you've got that grad student with 2 children, there's a different level for the 80 to 30% AMI based on the number of people, and then you qualify for bedrooms kind of that way. So I don't want to get into it more than that in case I misspeak. But that's all, they're all vetted through those processes.
Councilmember Spears.
Well, this is not the first of this kind. The Starway project was the first that's very, very similar to this.
Yes, sir.
So we should.
That was a LIHTC program, so that's a low-income housing tax credit. This, I think, is the first one that I've seen. Maybe there's been one before I was on council, but the LIHTC is different. That's what I was referencing.
The HUD and the percentage work very similar, and so I apologize for explaining something that may have been before.
Right, yeah, so I'm talking about the 30% AMI to 80% AMI were still, I think Sam gave a really good answer as to college students not being able to come in and live in this project based on their parents' finances. Because we know most college students at UNCW drive Range Rovers and BMW, so they won't want to live in 30 to 80% AMI. Don't get mad at me, UNCW. Thank you, Amy.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. This time, I open up the public hearing and ask if for anyone in the public wishes to come up and speak. State your name for the record and where you live. And Madam Clerk, will you please set the timer, please? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Logan Secord. I live at 2900 Newtown Drive. Madam Clerk, would you be willing to put up the slide with the area median housing income table? So I'm here to speak in support of this development. When I was reading through the application, I was very, very excited for this. 100% of units between 30% to 80% AMHI. If you compare that to what the density incentives for the city of Wilmington are, if you look at that 80% AMHI, that equivalates to an AMI of $68,160. That means the bottom 10% of most of the developments that come before this board are out of reach for every firefighter, every policeman, every teacher, every maintenance technician, just about everybody who's actually in the workforce. I even have talked to various people who work at Novant Health, and even nurses cannot afford to live at that rate. We are short somewhere in the tens of thousands of housing units in affordability, and like everywhere in the country, we're trying to figure out how to do that. And I recognize, as we see in the follow-up ordinances, that there are going to be programs that the city is going to do to help bring that about, but we're talking about 184 units that will really solve that problem to contribute. As to the traffic, based on some of the comprehensive plans that I've read, we have approximately 30,000 people who work here, who contribute here, who commute here because they cannot afford to live here. And I'm pretty sure that they're willing to sit in traffic for a couple extra minutes to do it. And hopefully, because they're right next to some very good local businesses, the coffee shop there and Round Bagels, that they're going to be walking there to support some Wilmington local businesses. In short, we're in desperate need of developments like this and incentives like this, and I've worked with various nonprofits trying to find solutions, and there's no easy solutions to solve our problem, but this is one that can really make a dent. To close, I've been speaking at just about every planning board hearing, and I introduced myself to Sam after the hearing, after the unanimous approval, and I said, so, need another 5 of these if you have it by the end of the year, and maybe we'll start making a dent. And he said, it's somewhat hard to do, but that's unfortunately where we're at. So I hope you will all express your support of this and the GAP funding that will come after this as we work to support the people who support our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. My name is Clayton Hamersky. I am the chair of the Cape Fear Housing Coalition. We are a nonprofit that is dedicated to housing affordability here in the Cape Fear region. I just wanted to read off, I'm speaking in favor as well, I wanted to read off a quick letter that we have sent to yourselves. So I'll get going with it. On behalf of the Cape Fear Housing Coalition, we are writing to express our support for Blue Ridge Atlantic's proposed multifamily affordable housing development on Carr Avenue. Blue Ridge Atlantic's proposal to provide 184 new affordable apartments directly addresses a critical gap in our local housing stock, particularly within city limits. The proposal to create new affordable rentals for our community's seniors, family with children, and essential workers is an exciting opportunity to meaningfully increase our local affordable housing stock and to provide hundreds of our neighbors with the economic stability they need to thrive. Further, the project fits well within our community's wider efforts to identify opportunities for public-private partnerships that expand our affordable rental stock, harnessing the expertise and economies of scale that tax credit developers bring to the table brings new quality units online, while also ensuring experienced property managers will maintain the project property for the long term. The involvement of the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency guarantees that this project will remain affordable for many years to come. The Cape Fear Housing Coalition is proud to endorse this project as a model of responsible and affordable development that positively contributes to the quality of life in our region. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, anybody else?
How are y'all doing?
Good.
Okay, my name is Siobhan Holmes Moss. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I am supportive of the project because a lot of the housing that has been built is molding over and or just falling apart. And to have some new housing built that will be affordable is something that's needed. I agree with Mr. Spears as far as the in and out. Kerr Avenue is a mess between 2:30 and 5 o'clock when kids get out of school with the buses and everything else. So to possibly find another way would be great. The last thing I want to say is this. To have to keep fighting to build affordable housing, why not make the wages where people can afford to live wherever they need to? Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
Greetings and salutations. I'm Kahan. I'm from out east, and believe it or not, I actually agree with this project because it's stressing affordable housing, and that's something that's I feel is very important in this city, the need for affordable housing. And I agree with the young lady as well, who came up before me, that perhaps employers should pay the citizens of Wilmington a living wage. That would probably be in the best interest for everyone, because think about it. If people are being paid a living wage, that's more money coming into the economy. That's more money coming to the coffers of the city and the county. So it's a win-win situation, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, and it's kind of rare for me, but normally I'm against everything. But with this proposal, I agree with it. I agree with it 100%. And as the Councilman Spears, it is a madhouse on Kerr between, 2 and 5 p.m. It's totally crazy. It is. So perhaps, I don't know, maybe rework the traffic pattern some type of way, more access, side roads going into Kerr, some type of way to maybe alleviate some of the traffic issues. But this is something I can get behind, and I just ask that more companies come to the city with affordable housing, and therefore people who need a place to stay in this beautiful city will be able to stay here and enjoy all the amenities that the city has to offer. Thank you for your time. Good day.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Mr. Spears, did you have a comment, sir?
So as it relates to the traffic, one more time, and we've done this so much that the thought just dawned on me. If you could just anticipate a right in and a right out only, where you don't have anyone coming down Kerr trying to make a left into this development, that might help a little more. And again, I'm just throwing it out there because I believe that that's going to be some sort of an issue. And I understand people saying, well, people could wait a few extra minutes, and they could, but then you won't be the ones to receive those phone calls for making that bad decision where we can just be innovative enough or proactive enough to just ask for this.
We appreciate your feedback, I really do, and we will absolutely take all those comments into consideration. So,
Okay.
thank you.
I hope so.
Madam Clerk, have you received any additional comment? Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, go ahead.
My name is Gail Pike. I'm not opposed to this, but I have a question. As I look at the screen, it says it's 100% workforce housing. But further on the slide say 30 to 80. My question is, can the developer decide 30% is efficient, or I'm meeting the requirements to have 30% workforce housing, and the remainder will not be? So I think there needs to be a clarification, because here it clearly says 100%, but later on it reduces that amount that would be workforce.
Yes, ma'am, just to clarify, 100% of the units, all 184, will be affordable housing. 30 to 80% is the area median income that you would need to qualify, but all 100 units, and that's going to be part of the conditional rezoning that we're asking for tonight. Does that answer your question? We can't change it. unless the city council changes it.
Right.
So all 100 units.
Are workforce eligible,
Yes, ma'am.
but between 30 to 80% below the median income for the city of Wilmington.
Based on your income. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Rumble.
The terms affordable and workforce, there's a fine line. I mean, there's really two completely separate things. As far as this council is concerned, we've always, the affordable housing is at one level of AMI and workforce is at another. I like the fact that you've got it at 30 to 80, and I guess it would be a first come, first serve. You're not going to save something for this. The first 184 people that come along that qualify below that 80 or below, they're in, if they meet your qualifications.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to clear that up.
All right, any other questions? All right. Madam Clerk, have you received any additional commentary? Okay, you have not. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes, sir.
you've made this motion, right?
Yes, I did.
Right, and I second it, but you could make that motion for the right turns only. You could add that condition. Madam-
I'd rather leave that, I think they heard us, and I don't want to make that a condition if it's not really.
It's
Say they
gonna be
can't do
needed.
it.
Well, Kevin,
Yeah.
one thing, because I'm hearing what you're saying, and I've been out there, and I don't disagree with you. The one difference here is that you do have the turn lane, so you can get out of the lane and get into that turn lane, or what we call here in the South, suicide lanes. But if you go right in and right out on Kerr, then you're forcing all of the traffic down to, I guess, Kimberly? Can we have that? So then you have, so you're just moving it from that location upward. So I'm more concerned, and I guess I would just share with staff, a de-acceleration lane of some sort on a Kerr going north, where you're pulling off. That's that traffic, if you're heading, back toward Market Street, it's still a two-lane. So if somebody's turning in, making a right into that particular development there, you do, in my opinion, I think you do need some sort of a de-acceleration lane of some sort. On the traffic that's coming south, you do have the turn lane there. And you can move over, and yeah, you might have to wait for that traffic to move on before you turn. But to make a right in and right out, I think you move the issue up, and I'm not a traffic engineer, up to Kimberly, and then you're just moving it from that location.
But that's my concern, that turning lane going left onto Kimberly and into the entrance, the main entrance. If you make that decision, you may be new to Wilmington and don't understand that you're gonna be waiting a long time. And then also, the person who tries to make that left and just.
I agree. I mean, I know that the long-term plan is to four-lane Kerr all the way, hopefully, to Oleander. They have done it in phases over the years, just based on the money that they have, get for the MPO. But I do feel that the concerns of council, and I hope it's reflected from where our discussion is here, that when TRC goes through this process, that you really look at this intersection going in and get out. I think it's a great project. It's desperately needed. City supporting it financially also in some respect. But I do feel that we do just make certain that we're really looking at this intersection, because none of us up here are traffic engineers, and I have to depend on our city engineering and staff to look at that. But I do think a de-acceleration of some sort going north is needed for that traffic heading that way. And how you deal with it on the left-hand turn coming in is something totally different. Ms. Chambers, you have any thoughts on that?
We are listening, and we will make sure that this is part of the discussion when it comes through review. I will reiterate that this is a NCDOT road, so we'd have to make those improvements in conjunction with their approval as well.
I understand that. Okay.
All right. All right. Yes, sir.
All right. Then I think I closed the public hearing, but I'll close the public hearing and ask for the wish of the council. We have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett and Councilmember Spears. Mr. Barnett, will you please read the statement for the
Yes, sir.
record, please?
I move to approve the proposed amendment to rezone property located at 507, 509, 515, 519, 525, and 529 South Kerr Avenue from R10 Medium Density Single Dwelling District to MD17 CD High Density Multi-Dwelling Residential Conditional District for a 184-unit multi-dwelling development, and find to be consistent with the relevant policies in the comprehensive plan. Based on the application materials and the information provided at the public hearing and in the staff report, and find approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning would provide affordable housing options near commercial services, employment centers, and along an existing transit route.
Okay. All right, are we ready to vote? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 It passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is ordinances. We have item 01A, which I believe is the resolution that has to go first.
No, the ordinance has to go first.
I'm
The
sorry,
resolution-
you got it right, you're correct.
You're right.
Thank you, sir. So we have item 01B, which is the ordinance appropriating $3,150,000 to the general fund balance to affordable housing gap financing to support the development of Avenue Flats and a 184-unit affordable housing development at 507, 515, 517, 519, and 525 South Kerr Avenue. Then we will come right back to the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter an agreement with Blue Ridge Atlantic Development LLC for gap financing for affordable workforce housing utilizing $4 million of general fund committed affordable housing fund balance. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Cottle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rachel LeCaux, our Neighborhood Services Director, will overview both of these items for us.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Member of Council. Tonight before you, we have both the ordinance to appropriate the funding as well as the resolution. Just a little history of why I'm here tonight for the ordinance first. For many years, City Council has supported affordable housing in the community, following the recommendations of the ad hoc Joint City and County Affordable Housing Task Force and the Permanent Workforce Housing Advisory Committee that was established to support the goals and plans that they had. Council assigned $3.5 million for affordable housing in fiscal year 22. Following year, in fiscal year 23, Council established a policy to dedicate the value of 1 cent on the property tax for affordable housing, assigning an additional $1.5 million for affordable housing that budget year. Later that year, $1.85 million was appropriated for Canopy Point, with $3.15 million remaining in uncommitted funds. Shown here are some historical investments in affordable housing over the past 4 years. As you can see, the investments made by City Council between both general funds, federal funds, and some one-time funds, nearly $19 million, leveraging total project costs of over $112 million. So these projects consisted of low-income housing tax credits of 9% and 4%, as well as permitted supportive housing. Just a little bit about the project that you just heard of. This is a 4% low-income housing tax credit project that has an application to North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. It is similar to Starway Villages, although this project does have a range of 30 to 80% AMI, where Starway was really at that 60% AMI. So you are seeing a variety this time. Shown here is the unit composition that was part of the application, so you can see the number of units that are assigned for each bracket. Rents will range from about $500 to $1,800 depending on unit size and household income. The total project budget for this development is just under $59 million. We are recommending a $4 million loan using general funds that we are asking you to appropriate first and then enter the resolution. Shown here is just a breakdown of the total project funding with some of the gap financing that they are requesting from both the city, New Hanover County, and some other grants, just to show that total impact of what goes into a project of this scale and size. So staff is recommending approval of the ordinance to appropriate the funds as well as the resolution to enter the agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Any questions, Ms. LeCaux? Mr. Waddell.
Thank you, Ms. LeCaux. Rachel, sorry, forgot your new last name.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So 3.15 is coming from the Affordable Housing Fund.
The undesignated.
Right, the undesignated. What's the 850? I think I saw it in 01A, but I apologize. I couldn't wrap my head around where that 850 is coming from.
That's part of the 1 cent that has been dedicated over the past few years. When you look at this historical investments, you'll see we have not been spending all of that on these larger projects. We've used it for some in-house programs, but not all of it.
Tracking. Okay, so basically coming from the same funding source. It's
That
just
money, yeah, that money was appropriated already with the budget.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Mayor Pro Tem.
Can you go back one more slide? The slide that showed, yeah, right there, where we talked about it, and I think helped the person in the audience, where it looks like we're getting 30 units at 30%, 36 units at 50, 65 at 60, and 53 at 80. That's the goal, correct?
That is what they have put in their application. Here's
Right.
actually a breakdown. You can see of the actual bedroom size, the rent,
Okay.
the number of units for each
Excellent.
one to really see that. That's what
Right.
they have proposed in their application to Housing Finance Agency.
Okay, cool. And that's what they're planning to do, right? So you couldn't do all like 80% or all 30%, because you got 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. So that's why it wouldn't work that way anyway. Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
All right, we'll tackle the ordinance first. What are the wishes of council in respect to item 01B? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Andrews, second by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Rammark, second by Councilmember Spears. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. Now let's go to the resolution, which I have already read into the record, which is item 01A. What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? A motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
A little slow tonight, but that was a unanimous vote the way I heard it. Thank you very much. So that passes unanimously. Congratulations. That brings us to item 02, which is an ordinance making supplemental appropriations for the purchase of a cloud-based key tracking system from Key Cafe Incorporated and a technology upgrade to 3 camera towers from Cradle Point Incorporated, utilizing $27,308 of North Carolina drug tax revenue. This time I recognize our city manager, Mr. Connell. Mr. Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Captain Alana Williams will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. The Police Department would like to use $27,308 of NC drug tax revenue for 2 important projects. First is the Key Cafe, which is a cloud-based key tracking system. We have over 400 keys to various vehicles, trailers, implements, and other locations throughout the city. We must track these on a daily basis. The Police Department had a key tracking system that failed in approximately 2020. Since then, we have been using handwriting and envelope methods to track all these keys. And with the Key Cafe, we can have access 24/7. It remains secure due to the software program. And this new and innovative system will allow for better accountability and cut down on the cost of key replacement in case of loss. Secondly, we have 3 camera towers that were purchased on a grant that we use during major events such as the Azalea Festival for situational awareness. Those towers are currently run off 4G. We'd like to upgrade those to 5G for smoother and more effective connectivity. We please ask you to take these items into consideration and pass this ordinance? Answer any questions if you have.
Any questions, officer? Okay. Thank you, ma'am. What are the wishes of council? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Joyner, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Joyner, second by Councilmember Ravenbark. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item, which is item 03, which is an ordinance making supplemental appropriations of $1,700,000 to the general fund and $100,000 to the parking fund for the purpose of funding improvements to 115 North 3rd Street and 114 North 2nd Street for a lease to the United States General Services Administration, better known as GSA. At this time, I'd like to recognize City Manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Economic Development Director Aubrey Parsley will overview this item for us.
Mr. Parsley, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. The ordinance before you tonight is a follow-up item from the resolution presented at the previous council meeting that was approved by council. As can be read in the ordinance here, the previous resolution was related to authorizing a lease with the General Services Administration. That resolution authorized the city manager and city attorney to enter into that lease agreement. The funding identified in this ordinance will be used to improve the city-owned properties located at the addresses seen here on the slide, and it would help deliver the space that the city needs to deliver to receive $500,000 a year in rental revenue over at least 10 years. Most of these monies will be reimbursed to the city upon the delivery of the space. There is a little over $600,000 that is amortized in the lease and is part of that $500,000 a year rental amount. That concludes my presentation for this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions on any details as council sees fit.
Any questions for Mr. Parsley? Sir, Mr. Ravenbark?
I'd just like for it to be made very clear to anybody listening or seeing what we're doing, that we're not spending this money to get a $500,000 a year tenant. We're going to be reimbursed. When we deliver the project?
Yes, sir.
We get reimbursed. I just want, because I've had 2 people already call me and say, what are y'all, crazy? So just make sure that's painfully clear. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What are the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance? We have a motion approved by Councilmember Andrews, second by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Ravenbark, second by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which is item 04, which is an ordinance amending various portions of Chapter 4, Article 5 of the Wilmington City Code to include additional provisions regulating commercial pedal vehicles for hire. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Caudle. Mr. Caudle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our city attorney, Meredith Everhart, will overview this item for us.
Thank you, Mr. Caudle, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. This item is coming to you because as a result of gentlemen who came and spoke to you, I believe, on several occasions about wanting to increase the number of possible licenses for pedal pubs in the city. The original trolley pub that we had allowed to do that, we did by a resolution, by an ordinance, that was specific to that particular company, the trolley pub, and we did that as a test case. Since that time, which has been multiple years ago, there's been no indication of any problems. We've spoken with the chief of police, and he's not had any issues with the trolley pub, which he was very concerned about it before we did that, and he's not had any concerns. And so this is a change in the city code to now allow for up to 6 what we're calling commercial pedal vehicles for hire within the city. And so that'll be open not only to the current trolley pub, but to any additional owners. The trolley pub currently has 2. This vehicle owner is requesting 2. It was originally 1, but they're asking for 2. And so there will still be additional licenses that are possible out there. And so the same rules that applied in the original ordinance with the trolley pub are what we're putting into our actual code right now, since it has been something that has turned out to work for the city. So that's what we're doing. I'll be available to answer any of your questions.
Are there any questions from Ms. Everhart? Okay. What are the wishes of council in respect to the ordinance? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Andrews. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first reading. Is there a motion to waive second reading? Motion made by Councilmember Waddell, second by Councilmember Joyner. Discussion, all in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously on first as well as second reading. That brings us to our next item of business, which are our resolutions. Item R1 is a resolution authorizing city manager to apply for a $2,400,000 in surface transportation block grant, direct attributable funds from the Wilmington Urban Area Planning, Metropolitan Planning Organization with a required local match of $600,000 for the South 17th Street Multi-Use Path Project. This time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Engineering Project Manager Rachel McIntyre will review this item for us.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Before you is a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply for $2.4 million in surface transportation block grant direct attributable funds from the WMPO for the South 17th Street Multi-Use Path Project. This project includes a 10-foot wide multi-use path on the west side of South 17th Street between Harbor Drive and Shipyard Boulevard, as well as pedestrian accommodations at the signalized intersection of 17th and Shipyard. The South 17th Street Multi-Use Path Project was submitted by the WMPO for prioritization in 2011. It was the highest scoring bicycle and pedestrian project in the state, and it is programmed in the current NCDOT STIP, utilizing NCDOT's allocation of federal funds through the Transportation Alternatives Program, which requires a 20% local match. The local match for the project's current funding was provided by the city's Pedestrian and Bicycle Improvements Committee in fiscal year '22. The city entered into a municipal agreement with NCDOT for the project in May of that year. The project is currently at 40% design, and additional funding is required to construct the full scope of the project. If awarded, the additional grant funding would increase the current project budget by $3 million. This includes the $2.4 million in requested federal funding from the WMPO and the required local match of $600,000 from the city. Funding for the $600,000 local match has been identified. The city's Bicycle and Pedestrian Improvements Committee voted at its July meeting to contribute another $100,000 to the project, and the remaining $500,000 is available from interest earnings on capital balances. Staff recommends approval of this item, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Rachel, the long-term plan for this is to continue this particular multi-use trail all the way down South 17th Street to where we have a multi-use path currently, correct?
It's planned to connect to the Cross City Trail. There's also a recommended trail along Independence Boulevard all the way to River Road in the adopted Greenway plan.
That's correct. Okay, I forgot about that. That's right. Okay. Mr. Einbar?
Where does this particular trail, I see in this, it originates at Harbor Drive, runs alongside Green Lawn Cemetery.
Yes, sir.
And then there's improvements to get across Shipyard. But where does this path originate? Is that where, is it going to go back toward the town, back toward the hospital?
The original project and the way it was in the Greenway plan went all the way to Greenfield Park. Since then, the limits of the project have been reduced due to cost, but also there's been a lot of sidewalk infrastructure that has been installed. So right now where this project is like a 0.3-mile sidewalk gap. There is sidewalk to the north and sidewalk to the south.
Going back toward the hospital.
Yes, sir.
And then eventually across 17th Street, or across Shipyard, going down 17, and then there's another section that goes up Independence or Shipyard toward, toward Independence, toward River Road.
Right, as well as a potential connection to the Cross City Trail there.
Okay, I've misplaced my pretty picture somewhere in the background. Could you send that to us, what you're describing? I'd like to see how it lays out. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, what are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? A motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Andrews. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item, which is item R2, which is a resolution authorizing filing of condemnation actions for acquisition of right-of-way and easements for the Greenville Loop Trail Section 2 project. At this time, I'd like to recognize our city manager, Mr. Cottle. Mr. Cottle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assistant City Attorney Whitley Stavish will overview this item for us.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. This resolution before you is for the filing of condemnations for Greenville Loop Trail Section 2. We have 12 potential condemnations that will need to be filed by the end of the month for the Greenville Loop Section 2 multi-use path project. This consists of right-of-way, temporary construction easements, permanent drainage easements, and permanent utility easements. We need to have acquisition completed by October of 2024 to stay on the construction schedule. This is a map of the Greenville Loop Trail Section 2 project. Staff has sent offer letters to all owners. We have continued to reach out to owners prior to filing. We are now up to 7 potential condemnations that have agreed to settle, but we have not closed yet. We'll continue to negotiate with owners and work to resolve their issues before and after filing. This project has had quite a few HOA properties, several businesses, and high-value residences along the corridor, which has made it a little more difficult to negotiate. And in order to stay on schedule, we have to complete acquisition so the engineering can bid the project for construction. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
You guys been busy, haven't you?
Very.
Appreciate all your hard work. Does this conclude the Greenville Loop Road section there as far as condemnations and stuff?
Yes.
So this pretty much puts us on the glide path to go ahead and start the process of bidding this project out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
It's being bid in sections.
I understand. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. What are the wishes of council in respect to the resolution? We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Rambark, second by Councilmember Waddell. Discussion. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The item passes unanimously. That brings us to our next item, which is item R3, which is a resolution authorizing the amendment of condemnation actions for the acquisition of easements for the Hooker Hinton Multi-Use Path Project Forever. At this time, let's recognize our city manager, Mr. Cottle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is once again the city attorney's venue, so.
Madam Attorney.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. This is not an additional condemnation. Both of these properties have already been condemned, but during the course of the negotiations, it was determined by staff that instead of a temporary construction easement, we need a permanent drainage easement. So the only thing that's before you is to allow us to add in those additional funds to the court for the condemnation. So.
Very good. Any other comments, questions? Okay. All in favor of that resolution? No. Could I have a motion? I have a motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Barnett, second by Councilmember Andrews. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes unanimously. This concludes the regular agenda. Are there any items to be brought forward by our city attorney?
No, sir.
City manager?
No, sir.
Madam Clerk? Mr. Joyner?
No, thank you.
Mr. Waddell? Mayor Pro Tem?
Kids are in school, full blast. I'd ask that we just continue to support our schools, both public and private. They can use volunteers, they can use help, and then encourage our kids to do well in the process.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rambark?
Yes, sir. Item that's been weighing heavy on my mind is the condition of our roadways and our streetscapes. I've talked to everybody that'll listen to me, and everybody's got the reason why we can't get out there and mow foot-high weeds on our main collectors and some not-so-main connectors. And we've approved money tonight for everything from brick streets to you name it. We need to find a way to get caught up, and I don't know what that is, but I'm asking you, Mr. City Manager, to come up with some kind of a plan where we can get these medians cut. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We have several openings on boards and commissions that we're looking for volunteers coming up. We're going to be having 2 terms expiring on the Commission on African American History. We have one chronic opening and one coming up for hoteliers for the Convention Center Advisory Committee, 2 alternates for the Loan Review Board, and 2 alternates for the Board of Adjustment. Hopefully will be approved, but that is in the future. So if you're interested in that, go to wilmingtonnc.gov, click on Government, scroll down to Boards and Commissions, and scroll down to the bottom of the page, and you can find an application. You can also find out all about all of our boards and commissions and how to get involved.
Thank you. Ms. Spears? Okay. With that, thank you for taking an interest in your government. We stand adjourned.